Hi, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we have a new life story. Let's begin.
My name was printed in gold foil on the envelope. The same kind of fancy shimmer you see on wedding invitations or graduation cards from people who never showed up but still want credit. I ran my fingers across the letters. Harvard University Office of Admissions, and forgot how to breathe for a second. I was 18, standing barefoot in our kitchen, holding the future in my hands. The sunlight caught the edge of the paper. My mom was on the phone. My dad was fixing something under the sink, grumbling about plastic parts not being what they used to be. I opened the envelope, read the words, and felt the floor shift beneath me. Dear Miss Langston, congratulations. It is my pleasure to offer you admission. I gasped. Then I laughed. Then I cried. Then I made the mistake of telling them right away. They hugged me, congratulated me. My mom even screamed. My dad patted me hard on the back like I was a football player. But by that evening, the questions started. How much does it cost? Is there a scholarship? Do you really think Boston is safe? Wouldn't it be better to go somewhere closer, like state? That last one wasn't even a question. It was a warning. I told them I got partial aid, but yes, there would be loans. They didn't say anything at first, just exchanged a long look. One of those looks parents use to speak in silence when they think their kids are too young or too stupid to notice. Then my father said something I wouldn't understand fully until years later. We'll handle the paperwork. Just focus on your studies. You've worked hard enough. The thing is, they did handle it. Loan applications, co-signatures, the whole financial aid maze. I signed what they gave me. I trusted what they said. And in return, they gave me a golden leash. Harvard was everything I dreamed of, and more. Snow-covered quads, heated lecture halls, people from everywhere, minds faster than mine, professors who'd published the books I used in high school, students with names I recognized from national competitions. I felt small, then proud, then scared, then electric. And for the first time, I saw myself without the filter of where I'm from. But I also felt the leash tighten, one phone call at a time. Every Sunday. Have you joined a church up there yet? Why don't you come home this weekend instead of that trip? We don't like what you posted on your Instagram. Take it down. I hope you're not hanging out with those people. You're getting a little too opinionated. And always this at the end. Don't forget, we're paying. Just remember who's holding the bag. It wasn't a joke. It was doctrine. By junior year, I was suffocating. I'd turned down internships because they didn't approve of the cities, declined a scholarship because they didn't like the foundation behind it, deleted a viral op-ed I wrote on race and class in academia because my dad said, that kind of talk won't get you hired. I thought about transferring, but transferring meant breaking the loans. Breaking the loans meant they'd drop the payments, and dropping the payments meant tens of thousands of dollars of debt landing squarely on my head mid-semester. Every semester, they reminded me, we've got the logins. If you step out of line, the payments stop. Interest stacks fast, honey. And I believed them, because they weren't lying. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in political science and a full ride offer for law school from Columbia. They said, that's enough. You're not becoming one of those liberal lawyers who sues small businesses for a living. My dad added, if you apply, we're done helping you. You'll drown in debt. So I paused, froze, waited. I got a job at a nonprofit in D.C. instead. Quiet work, barely covered rent. but I told myself it was a start. It was also a cage. They were still paying the undergrad loans, still sending me advice, still threatening to pull the rug if I didn't come home for Easter, if I didn't take down a tweet, if I didn't babysit my brother's kids, if I didn't sound grateful. The moment everything changed came from a stranger. His name was Adam. He worked in finance. We met at a housing rights panel. He asked me why I hadn't gone to law school if I was clearly smart enough to lead the conversation. I laughed and said, "Student loans." He said, "There are refinancing options, and programs, even debt forgiveness if you go public sector." I blinked. Because no, I didn't know. I had never looked. I had been too scared, too obedient, too brainwashed to believe that I had options. That night, I opened my federal aid profile for the first time in 3 years. The logins had been changed. My name was still there, every loan listed under my social security number, but the account settings had my parents' email as the primary contact, their phone numbers as the backup, and a note under borrower preferences that said, "Do not contact borrower directly. Communication goes through authorized representative." That representative was my mother. She had literally flagged me out of my own future. I sat there, staring at the screen, heart thudding like it had its own agenda. I tried to reset the password. It sent the code to her number. And that's when I realized something. They hadn't just been paying my loans, they had been owning them. And through them, they owned me. The next day, I called the loan servicer, pretended to be a confused borrower. They asked me the standard verification questions. What was the name of your elementary school? I answered. What was your first pet's name? I answered. What's the make and model of the car you co-signed for in 2020? I froze. I didn't co-sign anything. The agent paused. That's what's on file. I'm sorry, we can't unlock access without confirmation from your representative. Representative? Your parent, listed here. That night, I called my mother. I didn't even pretend to be polite. What else have you signed in my name? A beat of silence, then her voice, syrup sweet. Oh, honey, don't be dramatic. You changed my password. You locked me out of my own loans. We're protecting your credit. That's what good parents do. No, good parents don't weaponize debt. She exhaled sharply. After everything we've paid for, after all the sacrifices, you want to act like we're villains? You didn't pay for me. You bought me. And for the first time in my life, I hung up first. Adriana, the woman who'd helped a friend of mine with her wrongful eviction case, became my lawyer. She met me in a coffee shop in Foggy Bottom and listened for 2 hours, took notes, asked sharp questions, didn't flinch when I showed her the email headers, didn't blink when I admitted I didn't even know what I'd signed at 17 when we applied together. You were a minor, she said. They put the debt in your name and then used it like a leash. That's not just unethical, it might be criminal depending on how they filed. My voice cracked. Can I fix it? She looked me in the eyes. You can take it all back. Over the next 3 months, we untangled the web. I learned that my parents had not only taken out Parent Plus loans, they'd encouraged me to sign for private student loans as a teen without explaining the implications. They had modified mailing addresses, consolidated accounts, and even accessed my credit report multiple times to ensure I wasn't applying for outside aid or escape routes. It was a legal trap built with love as camouflage. I started documenting everything. Emails, texts, voicemails, screenshots of edits they made in my loan dashboard. Every Sunday, my mother would still call. And every Sunday, I recorded it. One call changed everything. She said, "You've gotten too independent lately. We're starting to wonder if it's time to stop making those monthly payments." I stayed quiet. She went on, "Maybe if you moved home for a while, we'd feel more comfortable supporting you, just until you find your footing again." My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. "You're blackmailing me." "It's not blackmail, it's family." I sent the recording to Adriana that night. She called me 5 minutes later. "We're not just going to get you out, we're going to make sure no one can ever do this to you again." It took a legal filing, a credit freeze, and 2 witness affidavits, but I regained full access to my accounts. I restructured my loans, consolidated the federal ones under my name, applied for income-based repayment, and enrolled in a public service forgiveness program. It wasn't immediate freedom, but it was mine. And once the leash was off, I started speaking. The first thing I did was apply to Columbia again. I got in, full ride this time. No co-signers, no secrets. I posted about it on LinkedIn. The post went viral. The second thing I did was write a blog titled "Debt is Not Love: How My Family Used Student Loans to Control My Life." I named no names, but the story was clear. Emails flooded in. Hundreds. From women, from sons, from other first-gen students. They did the same thing to me. I thought I was alone. "You put words to something I've never told anyone." That's when I knew I wasn't just reclaiming my life, I was exposing a system. Because this wasn't just about my parents. It was about all the families who treat control as protection, who chain opportunity to guilt, who say, "We're helping you," while digging the pit deeper. They use debt to silence me, but I found my voice. And now, I'm using it. The day I walked into Columbia Law, I wore a blazer I'd bought secondhand and boots with cracked soles, but I held my head higher than anyone else in the room. Not because I was the smartest, not because I was the best prepared, but because I'd paid for this moment in full, with years of silence, guilt, and invisible chains I'd finally snapped. And I wasn't just here to study law, I was here to use it. At orientation, they gave us a welcome packet. Inside were the usual things: building maps, honor codes, cafeteria hours. But tucked into the middle was a sheet titled "Debt Counseling Resources." My throat tightened. For most students, it was just paperwork. For me, it was a trigger. I raised my hand during the financial aid Q&A and asked, "Do you have any support for students whose families control their loans as a method of coercion?" The woman leading the session blinked. "I'm sorry, can you clarify?" I did, in detail, without flinching. When I finished, the room was dead quiet. Then a girl in the back raised her hand and said, "That happened to me too." By the end of the week, I'd been asked to speak at the school's Women in Law panel. 2 weeks later, I met with the Dean of Student Life to propose a new support group, Debt Survivors Coalition. He said, "Do you think this is really that common?" I looked him in the eye. It's not rare, it's just buried under shame. We launched the group that fall. 10 students came to the first meeting. By the end of the semester, we had over 60 members. Some had stories worse than mine. One girl's parents had taken out loans in her name without her knowledge. Another had been forced to quit grad school because her family wouldn't let her move to a blue state. One guy was sued by his own father for breach of agreement after refusing to join the family business. Debt wasn't just money, it was a weapon. Meanwhile, I kept building my own case. Not a lawsuit against my parents. That wasn't the path I chose. But a public archive, a trail of stories, a platform. I created a website, leashnomore.org. Anonymous submissions, legal guides, resources for unshackling your name from someone else's power. It got shared by a few lawyers on Twitter. Then A journalist messaged me. Her name was Dana Shu. She was working on a piece for The Atlantic about intergenerational economic abuse. She asked if I'd go on record. I didn't hesitate. We did the interview in a quiet corner of campus. I told her everything from the Forge logins to the guilt trips, from the Easter ultimatums to the Sunday recordings. I showed her emails, texts, Adriana's legal summary. She was stunned. She said, "This isn't just a family story, it's systemic." A month later, the article dropped. The headline was brutal: "Owned by Debt: When Parents Hold Your Future Hostage." I was the centerpiece. The fallout was immediate. I received hundreds of messages, some cheering me on, some venomous. Strangers called me ungrateful, a spoiled brat, a liberal snowflake airing private family business. But I also got emails from reporters, university administrators, even a congresswoman's office asking for a briefing on the issue. And my parents? They went quiet, which for them was the loudest reaction of all. Until the envelope came. No return address, handwritten, heavy paper. I opened it cautiously. Inside, a cease and desist letter from my father's lawyer. It accused me of defamation, breach of familial privacy, and intentional damage to reputation. The letter demanded I take down all mentions of them, shut down the website, and retract defamatory statements within 10 days or face legal consequences. I forwarded it to Adriana. She read it, then called me laughing. "This letter is the equivalent of a tantrum in legalese. Let them try." I didn't take anything down. Instead, I wrote another post titled, "When the Silence Threatens You Back, Keep Talking." It got 60,000 shares in 48 hours. The fear was still there, buried deep in my chest. But now, so was something stronger: conviction. Because every time I spoke, someone else found the courage to break their silence too. Every time I stood firm, another daughter realized she wasn't crazy or dramatic or ungrateful. She was just controlled. And now she could be free. By the end of my first year at Columbia, I had been invited to speak at 2 law conferences, had met with a federal policy advisor, and had been profiled in Teen Vogue. My parents had stopped calling, but my younger sister, whom I hadn't spoken to in months, sent me a message one night. Just one line. "I read everything. I think they're trying to do the same to me." And I knew then, my story wasn't finished. It was only beginning. Because this fight wasn't just mine. It was hers, too. She was 17 and already drowning. I didn't need to read between the lines of my sister's message. One sentence was enough to know exactly what had begun behind those suburban walls. The same script, just with a different girl. I called her the next day. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey," she whispered. "Are you safe?" I asked, skipping every formality. A long pause. Then, "Not really." She told me everything in a rush, like the words had been bottled for too long and were finally escaping before anyone could put the lid back on. Our parents had encouraged her to apply to out-of-state schools, told her she could aim higher than I ever did. They gushed about new beginnings, promised to support her in any way we can. She got into NYU. Full tuition wasn't covered. Then they told her to sign a few things, to help move the process along. Same game, same leash. They were already requesting parental overrides, controlling email addresses, and streamlining billing so she wouldn't get overwhelmed. Her mother had access to her portal. Her father handled her FAFSA. And she was starting to feel it, that pressure, that tightening rope of conditional love. If I don't do what they want, they say I'm being ungrateful, or worse, that I'm being influenced by you. That night, I cried in the shower. Not because I was scared, but because I was furious. They hadn't learned. They hadn't changed. They were trying it again with more finesse, more polish. And my sister was quieter than me, kinder, more afraid of being the villain in their story. I couldn't let her become the next prisoner. I contacted Adriana the next morning. It's happening again. She didn't ask who, she just said, let's stop it now. Together, we drafted an emergency legal brief with two goals: prevent unauthorized control of student loan documents, protect her digital and financial identity before school began. We filed for temporary guardianship override on educational financial matters, citing my prior case, backed by evidence of coercion and misrepresentation. It was an aggressive move, but we knew their playbook now. The backlash was immediate. My parents emailed, called, texted, and even left voicemails for my employer claiming I was mentally unstable and attacking the family with lies. They emailed the dean of Columbia Law. They even posted a cryptic Facebook status: when your own blood tries to tear you down, keep praying. Truth always wins. My hands shook, but I didn't respond. Let them panic. We were already ahead. The court ruled in our favor temporarily. My sister regained full access to her financial accounts. The school removed parental contacts from her records. She was given an independent aid advisor. The debt, for once, would be hers and hers alone, not because she deserved the burden, but because she deserved freedom. When I told her, she didn't cry. She just whispered, "Thank you." I didn't think anyone would believe me. That's what broke me, because I had once felt the exact same thing. After that, I wrote a long-form essay. Not a blog post this time, a full exposé titled "The Debt of Obedience: How Families Use College Loans as Chains." It was picked up by the New York Times Magazine. I was interviewed on NPR. My inbox exploded. Law students, parents, journalists, therapists, professors. They all wrote in. But the messages that struck me most were from siblings. My older sister broke the cycle. I never told her thank you. My brother took all the blame so I could leave. I didn't know what freedom looked like until someone showed me. By the time I graduated from Columbia, the Debt Survivors Coalition had over 3,000 members across 4 universities. I launched a nonprofit, Unbound Futures, to fund legal help for young adults trapped in coercive debt relationships. We ran online workshops, legal clinics, anonymous forums, and I never stopped telling the story. Because every time I did, someone stepped forward and said, "That's me." My parents stopped trying to contact me. But one day, a package arrived. No return address, postmarked from my hometown. Inside was a box of old report cards, childhood drawings, my 5th grade spelling bee ribbon, and a note in my father's handwriting. "You've made your point. We hope someday you'll remember the good, too." I stared at it for a long time. Then I boxed it all up, sealed it again, and sent it back. Some things don't need remembering. I didn't fight back to erase the past. I fought back to build something new. My sister lives in Brooklyn now. She studies psychology, has her own bank account, tells her own story. Sometimes we sit on my apartment balcony and laugh about how quiet freedom sounds after you've spent years living in fear. It's not loud. It's steady, solid, real. If someone you love is holding your future hostage with the phrase, after everything we've done for you, let me tell you, you don't owe them silence. You don't owe them your voice. You don't owe them your life. You earned your wings. Don't let anyone call them a debt. Courtrooms have a smell, not of justice, but of nerves and dust and recycled air that's been breathed too many times by too many people praying to be believed. I sat at the plaintiff's table in a navy suit borrowed from Adriana's assistant. My palms were dry, my face unreadable, and for the first time in over a decade, my father couldn't look me in the eye. Sean was there too, jaw tight, suit impeccable, ego cracked but still intact. Opposite us sat their defense team, 4 lawyers, all men, all expressionless, like statues meant to guard legacy instead of truth. But I had more than truth now. I had proof. And I had a witness. Her name was Carolyn Pierce, my father's former secretary. She'd worked for him for 23 years. I remembered her vaguely, quiet, neat, the kind of woman who always smelled like clean paper. Adriana had tracked her down through an old HR log. She now lived in a small retirement town outside Roanoke and had been very interested to hear that the trust amendment was under legal challenge. When Adriana asked her what she remembered, she said, "Your father made a copy of Elizabeth's signature from an old field trip form and kept it in his drawer for months. Said he'd use it if she ever made the wrong choices." That testimony, under oath, was devastating. Carolyn was poised, calm. She didn't ramble, just told the court what she'd seen and what she'd chosen not to say for years, out of fear. But fear, she said, didn't last as long as guilt. The defense tried to poke holes, said she was misremembering, that no such drawer existed, that she was confused about the timeline. But we had more. A scanned email between my father and a now deceased legal clerk referencing making the signature fit and ensuring the daughter doesn't become a problem. The judge requested a recess. My father looked like he'd aged 20 years in a week. That night, Sean showed up at my apartment. I opened the door with the chain still on. He looked tired, hollow. "Can we talk?" he asked. "No, not without my lawyer." He exhaled. Dad's falling apart. So did I. At 19, alone, pregnant, cut off. That wasn't my call. You took the money. He didn't deny it. I started to close the door. Then he blurted, "What do you want?" I stopped, looked him dead in the eye. "I want you to feel what it's like to be erased." Then I shut the door. The court reconvened 3 days later. Adriana laid out everything: the fraudulent notary signature, the asset reallocation through shell foundations, the internal email trail, the USB files, the letter from my grandmother, the forged timeline, and now the witness testimony from Carolyn. By the time she finished, the courtroom was silent. Even the judge took a moment before speaking. Then he said, "This court recognizes a pattern of deception, coercion, and misappropriation that extends beyond simple dispute. The amendment is void." My name was reinstated. The assets were frozen pending redistribution. And then came the blow I didn't expect. The judge referred the case to federal review for tax fraud. My father's face broke right there. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I didn't speak. Not yet. But I stood tall. For every girl told to sign what she didn't understand. For every daughter made to feel small for being born second. For every voice that was silenced in the name of honor. I became the storm. That night, Emma asked if I was okay. I knelt beside her and said, I'm more than okay. I'm free. I didn't take all the money. That surprises people when I tell them. They expect blood, fire, salt on the earth. But in the end, revenge doesn't always mean claiming everything. Sometimes it means letting go of what they thought defined you and watching them fall apart trying to keep it for themselves. The court awarded me 72% of the estate. Sean kept a small slice, enough to live on, but not enough to rebuild what he'd lost. The family name, the Greer legacy, became a scandalous footnote in probate law textbooks. Their charitable foundation folded within months. Half their business partners fled before the ink on the ruling had dried. And my father? He was indicted for tax fraud. He pled not guilty, of course, dragged it out, but the evidence was overwhelming. Misfiled assets, hidden donations, a forged signature trail that tied directly back to him. He was offered a deal, reduced sentence in exchange for full cooperation and a public admission of guilt. He refused. He couldn't admit he'd been wrong, couldn't admit that his daughter outplayed him. He died 6 months later of a stroke, alone, in a private care facility. No obituary. At the funeral, I didn't speak. Sean did. The words were polite, measured, hollow, like the estate, like the years of staged family photos and silent dinners. My mother didn't show. She sent a card, not to me, to the court. A letter saying she was relieved the process had ended and wished her children would stop hurting each other. I never heard from her again. I bought a house outside Asheville. Not a mansion, not an estate. Just a clean, warm home with old wood floors, morning light, and space for Emma to grow without shame. I kept the trust intact, but redirected much of it into a foundation of my own, named after my grandmother. The Rose Greer Women's Justice Fund. First initiative, legal aid for disinherited daughters. Second, a scholarship for single mothers fighting financial abuse. Third, public storytelling grants. Because power comes not from what you own, but what you share. 1 year later, I got a message. It was from a young woman in Nebraska. Her father had tricked her into signing over land that belonged to her mother. She'd read my case in a legal blog. She asked if I could help her find a lawyer. I replied within 10 minutes, connected her with Adriana, told her, "You are not alone. You're just getting started." And then I spoke. I went on a podcast, wrote an article, let them photograph me in my living room holding the document I signed at 19 and the one that voided it at 34. The title of the article was, "She Signed Away Her Inheritance at 19. 15 years later, she took back her voice." It went viral. Emma asked why people cared so much. I told her, because silence is contagious, but so is courage. She nodded, then went back to coloring. And I realized I wasn't fighting for money. I was fighting for her future to never look like my past. To every daughter told to sit down, be quiet, and smile for the photo, I see you. I was you. And you don't owe anyone your silence, not even your family.